This week I'm going to talk about some stuff related to political philosophy and ideology. To get started, I want to talk about kind of the birthplace of political philosophy and ideology, and that's with the Greeks. Greeks' thought, wisdom, and philosophy were important in helping making them a better sense of the world, emphasizing a worldly, skeptical sensibility. The Greeks were active in politics and were concerned about their communities. Democracy was first practiced in ancient Greeks. One of the major philosophers was Socrates. He developed the Socratic method of examining moral concepts of ethics, truth, morality, and justice. He said the highest forms of human excellence was to question oneself and others. He would question and refute people's answers. People started to think on their own, questioning authority, which upset the leaders of Athens. Athenians blamed him for the decline of Athens, and he was put on trial for corrupting the youth of Athens. Athenians blamed him for a lot of problems, and in 399 BC he was executed. Plato was a disciplined and a disciple of Socrates, and Plato wrote that states should be run by philosopher kings, in other words, the smart people. Plato's ideal world would mean that educated men and women in math, astronomy would be the ruling class. He taught people could never understand virtues like goodness and beauty because they could not be comprehended in thought or experience. Truth can only be discovered by careful questioning of things. The founder of political science is considered a man named Aristotle. Aristotle thought slavery was a natural way of living because some people were bound to be slaves. He said that only one thing could justify a monarchy: if the virtue of the king and his family were greater than the virtue of all citizens. Aristotle believed in studying subjects in their natural environment to produce the best results. He felt man can gain knowledge in goodness and justice and beauty by observation. His search for good and stable political systems are at the core of political science. He felt the best way to learn was by observation and watching. Machiavelli was a major person of the Middle Ages. His name is synonymous with deviousness and cruelty. He wrote a book called The Prince, where he laid out methods to secure, maintain, and exercise political power that has become the cornerstone of all major political philosophy today. Inspired by the way Romans ruled and governed, he urged leaders to be ruthless. He said if a ruler makes one miscalculation, all the authority that ruler has cultivated will dry up like morning dew. Machiavelli recommended politics to discourage political activism, think Putin, and channel people's energies into private pursuits. Monarchs could be excused from performing acts of violence and deception that would be indefensible in public life, as long as the monarch respects private property, traditions of their subjects, and promote material prosperity. But Machiavelli also argued that a republic, the form of government that the United States has, would be the best system of all as far as for running things. He said that a republic would strengthen the conflicts with open participation debate, where it has popular support, would be the best form of government. Machiavelli describes a person who manipulates others in an opportunistic and deceptive way. In the book The Prince, he said the end justifies the means. He praised winners like Alexander and Caesar, hated for their military and political success. He said any moral judgment should be second to getting, increasing, and maintaining political power. It is good to be true to your word, he said, but you should lie when it advances your power or security. Religion, morality have nothing to do with politics, unless being moral helps you get and keep power. The successful politician knows what to do and say in every situation. Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, said good and stable government is based on family and correct moral behavior. One of the major philosophers of the Middle Ages was John Locke, who developed social contract theory. People agreed to give up some of their rights and authority to the government to maintain social order. His writings influenced Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. Locke believed human nature is characterized by reason and tolerance, allowing men to be selfish. In a natural state, all people were equal, independent, and everyone had a natural right to defend their life, health, liberty, and possessions. Locke argued that we are obligated to obey the state if it protects our rights. Thomas Hobbes was another major philosopher and believed there are indispensable natural laws that should govern the states, their relations to their citizens and to others, or man will live in an uncivilized environment. Left unchecked, people would live violent, inhumane, and lonely lives. To keep these impulses in checks, citizens would draw up a social contract, ceding authority to an individual in exchange for a level of security. The ruler would control violent and selfish impulses of the individual members of society through brute force. Citizens lose liberty, but they gain security and community. Rousseau was a French philosopher who believed in the general will, that the will of the group is superior to the individual. His ideas led many ways to the French Revolution. He said social contract theory was made by the rich and powerful, who tricked people into surrendering their liberties in exchange for a variety of other things. Karl Marx was another philosopher. He is a German credited with the founding of communism. The first line in the Communist Manifesto said the history of all existing societies is the history of the classes of struggle. Marx argued that capitalism will produce tensions that will lead to the destruction of capitalism. Just as capitalism replaced feudalism, socialism, he said, would replace capitalism and lead to a stateless, classless society called pure communism. Basically, the workers would be in charge. For a proletariat was Marx's name for individual working class. He felt politics is a reflection of the underlying economic forces. He argued social economic changes would occur through organized revolutionary action. He argued workers get paid only a fraction of their value. And these were strong beliefs he had. He felt the French Revolution as a discrepancy between the classes of economic systems. The failures of Marxism, of course, is that capitalism has not collapsed. When it comes to looking at ideology, it's a very important element when you think about a lot of things of how politics flows in general. Ideology can be seen as a way of looking at things, a set of ideas or beliefs that society can be improved upon by flowing certain doctrines. Ideologies are designed for mass appeal. When we think of ideology in America, we think of liberalism, conservatism, libertarianism. Ideologies generally are thought of as on the far left and the far right. And ideologies have a set of principles on certain issues. Classic liberalism was one of the first ideologies around the 1800s. The key founders of it were Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill. Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations and wanted government out of the economy, who supported free trade, feeling that the market will regulate itself. Today we would use the word classic liberalism and maybe call that conservatism, but at that time period it was referred to as classic liberalism. He supported the idea of laissez-faire economics, that capitalism holds business interests, should be allowed to act without government interference. Basically, the government should stay out of the economy, let business do what business does best. Smith believed society should be free from as much government interference as possible. John Stuart Mill was a British philosopher of the 19th century. Mill addressed the nature and limits of power that can be exercised by society over an individual. Mill's harm principle holds it as acceptable for someone to harm himself as long as he is not harming others. In other words, if you want to have a 3-day stupor but you're locked in your apartment, that's okay as long as you're not harming other individuals. But Mill states harms can include acts of omission as well as acts of commission. Failing to rescue a drowning child is a harmful act, just as failure to pay taxes. He also argued that free discourse is needed for intellectual and society progress. He argued allowing people to air false opinions is productive because individuals are more likely to abandon erroneous beliefs if they are engaged in open exchanges of ideas. And he said forcing individuals to re-examine and reaffirm their beliefs in the process of debate is helpful in society. In the 1800s, modern liberalism occurred, where the market was not self-regulating with the rise of monopolies. By the 1930s, government stepped in to guarantee freedom to live in an adequate level and protect citizens from unfair economic systems. The New Deal was all part of this. American liberalism supports individual liberties. Democratically accountable government was popular in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement and the expansion of government programs. U.S. liberalism, the center of it was that government intervention can correct economic and social ills. So strong support for freedom of the press and freedom of speech, separation of church and state, equal opportunities, universal health care, the welfare state, gun control, environmentalism, expansion of diplomacy, pro-choice, supporting gay and LGBTQ rights, decriminalization of marijuana, reducing military spending. Liberalism states the highest good of society is the ability of members of society to develop their individual capabilities to the fullest. Conservatism, if you think about it, it centers on the word conservative, to preserve or save, maintaining order for the highest good of society. Edmund Burke from Britain is the founder of this ideology. Burke's ideas of placing property, things you own, at the basis of human development and the development of society was radical at the time. Burke believed individual property formed the basis of social structure. Social class was seen as a natural part of social order. Conservatism prefers gradual reform and tried and tested ideas as preferred to radical change. Burke conceded human equality in the eyes of God, but felt no such equality on earth. U.S. conservatism got its roots from classic liberalism and is often associated with the Republican Party. Core principles include a trust in God and country, a fiscal policy rooted in small government, laissez-faire capitalism, and supply-side economics. American conservatives believe the U.S. is uniquely among all nations in its standing and actions and should guide the course of history. Some of the early leaders of American conservatism included William F. Buckley, the founder of the National Review, Senator Barry Goldwater, the author of The Conscience of the Conservative, and also Ronald Reagan. The conservative movement grew in the 1960s in reaction to the Civil Rights Movement, anger about the Civil Rights Movement, evangelical Christians angry about what they saw as the breakdown of family. Socialism advocates state or cooperative ownership, the administration of the means of production, the distribution of goods, a society characterized by equal opportunities for all. Conservatism criticizes private ownership. Marx states socialism would be achieved by class struggle. Socialists believe capitalism concentrates power and wealth in the hands of just a few people, and that everyone doesn't get an equal opportunity. Socialists want a society in which wealth and power are distributed more evenly. Communism was the merging of Marx and Leninism. Communism was Marx's utopian vision. Marx envisioned a society where you would not need police, money, or even government. The problem is with communism and socialism is you need a large government to run all those things. Towards the end of the Cold War, Mikhail Gorbachev announced programs to modernize communism in the Soviet Union, to make changes to party leadership in order to reform the system. Unfortunately, it was too late. Nationalism is a very powerful force. It is an ideology that people don't think of it that way, but has become a significant political and social force in history. Nationalism is a good thing that can at times be used for evil. It's a form of culture or a social movement that focuses on the nation. Nationalism is an ideology and social movement originating in Europe at the time of the French Revolution. It was born out of the idea of popular sovereignty. It has become a significant national and political force in history, the major causes of world wars. Fascism was very popular in the 1930s with General Francisco Franco, Hitler, and Mussolini. Fascism emphasized the military, structure and order, offering stability. When people are scared, they want stability in life. Fascism combined extreme nationalism and a variety of other things to gain power, a one-party state. Fascism forbid and suppressed criticism and opposition to the government. Hitler was an anti-communist who used fascism to gain power. Some people in Britain even supported Hitler. Fascism is defined by what it opposes: individualism, liberty, conservatism, communism. In economics, fascist leaders want control of business and labor. Fascism focuses on a cult of unity. Today, when we think of other ideologies, we think of neoconservatism, where basically the U.S. government should get involved in promoting human rights overseas. The problem is the doctrine failed with the Iraq War. Libertarianism, as I've mentioned before, basically the government should stay out of economic things. Feminism, a stronger support for rights of women, which is very important if you want society to progress. If you want to find out whether a society is successful or a failure, there's only one data to look at. How well do they do at educating young girls? Societies that educate women are more successful than societies that don't. That's why a lot of Muslim cultures have failed. Environmentalism focuses on strong support for the environment and protecting the planet. Theocracy is ruled by religious leaders. 2 countries on this planet are theocracies, Iran and Vatican City. Finally, Islamism is derived from the conservative beliefs of the Muslim fundamentalism. It holds Islam as not only a religion, but a political system that also governs legal, economic, and social imperatives of the state. Ideology is an important thing to study, and I mentioned a lot of different ideologies in this video to give you a sense of how big they are and where they come from. And as you can see, how ideologies have changed over time and how they, in many ways, have become better and become a lot worse. Most importantly of all, take care. Have a good day.